Hey guys, so this is the kind of game that I find it harder to make a video about because I'm playing a higher rated player. I managed to work myself into an awesome position, but I forgot the first two rules of chess boot camp. Right? First rule, take your time. Second rule, king safety. Let's see how that works out for me. So I'm playing somebody rated 1405. This is a 30-minute rapid game. I start with e4, comes back with c5. This is the Sicilian. So what I'm doing at the moment is I'm enjoying playing the open Sicilian, which has d4. So I bring out my knight first to f3. He plays d5. And I decide to capture on d5. If his queen comes out into the board, then I can develop my knight to c3, as happens here, force him to lose a tempo. I've now got two minor pieces out in the board. And I think he thought for a little while on this move. No, he didn't really. He had to move it away. But this is definitely, I've got the advantage from the off here. Maybe he's thinking, oh, I'm playing somebody a bit lower rated and I can be a bit loose and free. But in those situations, the same rules apply. Take your time. Look at the whole board, everything. So I develop another minor piece, bring my bishop out. I'm now ready to castle. He's got all of his pieces still on the back rank. So it's time to, when you find a situation like this, you need to find a way to capitalize on your lead in development. He brings his bishop out. My queen is defending the knight there on f3, so I don't have to worry about using g2 to defend, so I can go ahead and castle. And we've got a semi-open file on e, so I'm definitely thinking about bringing the rook over to e1 at some point soon. Black plays e6, which will allow his dark squared bishop to come out. I play d3, allowing my dark squared bishop to come out. He plays knight to f6, and I develop my final minor piece, also pinning his knight. So this is looking like a good situation for me at this point. He brings out his bishop defending the knight, and now he's ready to castle. I bring my rook across to the semi-open file where it's going to have a lot more influence on the game. Now this rook, instead of just looking at the back of this pawn's head, it's now looking at 5 squares up here down the e file. So I'm very happy for that. Black castles. I improve my knight by bringing out into the middle of the board towards his king. Knights can only attack if they are near the opponent's king, really. I'll have much more influence on the game. So black then defends his knight. So we've now got a lot of focus here around this point, around the f6 square. So I've got 2 pieces looking at that now. He's now got 4 pieces defending it, including the g7 pawn. I decide let's kick the bishop away. I don't think this bishop's going to capture the knight. Indeed, he doesn't. And now I've got a decision to make. And I've got options of like pushing g4 potentially and trying to squeeze that bishop down, trying to gain space on the king side and try and compress my opponent's options. But the risk is that if I do that, I'm leaving my king a little bit exposed. So in the end, I thought for 50 seconds on that move. In the end, I decide to push g4. If I can persuade the bishop to go back to g6 and then it might exchange itself for a knight, I think that's okay. And then I realise that I can bring my knight in there to h4, and the bishop's actually got nowhere to go. It's either the square that it's on. And then I realise I can play my knight to h4, and in fact this bishop has nowhere to go. It's only got g6, but if it goes back to either of these, it'll get captured by a pawn. So the bishop then goes ahead and exchanges itself for the knight, which I think is great for me. I capture with a pawn, which then completely opens up the d file. and black then moves his queen away. Currently, my king is not too bad. This queen is not a huge threat at this point. So I decide to double down. I'll play f4. I'm really going to start squeezing now because I realise this bishop here is undefended on e7. So if I can push e5 and force that knight on f6 to move out the way, I can go ahead and grab the bishop. Black moves his rook there to d8, so I'm thinking, okay, there's a discovered attack coming here at some point. If that knight moves out of the way, my queen is suddenly threatened, and my queen is, I want to keep my queen in the attack. I want to keep it over where it's, helping my my position. Let's just look. This pawn on g4 is defended by a pawn. This pawn is currently defended by the bishop. This pawn is defended by a rook. So I decide that actually c3 would be good, and then I can maybe move my queen there to c2, where it's still helping with the defense of e4. But black decides not to launch the attack on the queen right now because it would be just a fairly pointless move. Oh yeah, the other thing, of course, is for this move is that I'm worried about if the knight comes to here, my bishop on c4 is undefended. So I want to be able to put my queen in a place where, well, I need to be able to protect my queen and my bishop at the same time. So if the knight does move there to b6, I've got a couple of options. I could move my queen to b3 is one. But another option I've got is to move my bishop down there to d3, where it would be pinned, but at least it's still pointing up that side of the board towards the king. The queen can protect it, and then I could maybe protect the bishop with other pieces. Okay, so black decides here to push e5, which really kind of blocks up the situation, the position on that side of the board in front of the king. So I've got an option here to capture, and then black would recapture with either the queen or the knight, but I don't really fancy that situation very much. I don't think that's really in my favour, bringing his knight into the middle of the board with the attack on my queen and stuff like that. So in the end, I keep the tension there and I throw my knight in to attack this undefended bishop there on e7. Black then finds a decent move, so he comes here, he moves the knight out of the way now, attacking my undefended bishop and also attacking my queen, so I need to do something about it. What I decide that an attack with check gives me time to get out of the way and to find another solution, so I jump in and grab the bishop. I think that's good. The queen recaptures, and now I decide that queen to b3 is the preferable of the two options. It means that this pawn is still pinned. The rook and the queen have to remain to a degree in the defense of that f7 pawn. Black comes in and grabs the bishop. I recapture. And now I'm feeling like I'm in a relatively comfortable situation. I have a bishop on the board, and the board is starting to open up. Pieces are coming off. Black's pawns are a little loose. I have a bishop, he has a knight, so I'm thinking material is equal, so we're looking okay here. Black captures a pawn, and I push. And this is the point now where I'm starting to think, this is my game. I can win this game. The knight is pinned onto the queen and the rook. So I thought for a moment about recapturing with the bishop, and then I realised, no, I still have this move. I still have the attack on the pinned knight. So he's in trouble, right? And this is one of those absolutely key times when you're playing chess that you have to take a breath. You have to remember your discipline, okay? So I can go ahead and capture the knight. Now, for black to recapture that pawn, that's looking very dangerous indeed. What he does instead is push a pawn to f3. I'm thinking, well, this pawn isn't a massive threat. I have a great threat here. I can go ahead and capture on g7 with my pawn, threatening to capture the rook, create a queen at the same time, and cause all kinds of trouble for black. Now, I took 3.3 seconds over that move. I have 22 minutes left on the clock. And can you see my error? Right? Rule number 1, take your time. Rule number 2, king safety. Queen to g3, check. My king only has, well, it has 2 squares to go to. I could go to h1, I could go to f1, it doesn't really matter, the result is the same. Queen to g2, checkmate. Right? That game was mine for the taking. I rushed this move, taking the pawn. I had much better options. Bishop to f4 would have attacked the queen, right? And I still have pawn takes g7, okay? Queen to f4 attacks the queen, threatens a trade. I'm a piece up at this point, right? And I still have my pawn over that side of the board. What I did was I got overexcited. I got careless. I forgot rule number 2, protect your king. Right? There's a reason why these rules are in that order. Rule 1, take your time. If I had taken my time, I would have had options. There's loads of options here. I could have even moved my king to f2, queen to h2, I capture the pawn, and you know, I'm okay here. My rooks are active. I have an extra bishop on the board. My queen's in the middle of the board. I've got the same number of pawns as black. I should have been absolutely fine. The computer says this is a totally winning position, and but as soon as I took that, it says this position is now completely lost because it is forced checkmate, and that's it. Okay, so shame on me. I completely threw away a totally winning position, and it's just one more reminder to pay attention. I'm playing a 30-minute game. How many times in the videos that I've made already on here have I said, look how much time the player has left on the clock, right? I could have got some useful points from that. I'm trying to get up to 1400 rating for the whole of 2020, and this shameful performance has certainly not helped me in that particular regard. So yeah, it's just one more lesson to take your time. And always remember, it doesn't matter how winning your position is, if you open yourself up to checkmate, you can expect to be punished. All right, see you later.